standards in the Western world have increased more during the past 200 years than they did during the 200,000 years before that, actually. So we have had an enormous increase in prosperity, and what happened was basically that some 500 years ago we saw that small city-states started trading, and we saw that the very powerful church and the very powerful kings, their power was cut back, so that there was more freedom for people to trade and to start companies and to start banks and to earn money, etc. All those things that build prosperity, and that intensified during the past 200 years, so that we saw that those freedoms for the entrepreneur to pursue an idea or to start a company, to start trading, that is to create something from basically nothing, to start making products that might be useful for consumers. That is the process that was started about 200 years ago and has been intensifying. So that's freedoms for people to create more prosperity, create goods and services and jobs out of starting companies and competing for the consumers. There's always a need to reform, because no country is ever perfect, so every country can always improve. But we also can see that many of the systems that we now have in, for instance, pensions or healthcare or regulations in labor markets, were founded in a time when there were ideas that were dominant, for instance, about the need to have a more centrally planned economy, which we today know are false. So we know that these systems have false grounds, and therefore there's a need to reform. And we can also see that there's another need for reform when you can see that one country tries something and becomes very successful. Perhaps you want to learn. If we take those 200 years, that countries 200 years ago were very different compared to what countries are today. So countries have actually reformed in very fundamental ways, and they have improved the institutions in many ways, so that the entrepreneur can have more freedom to create something, to create more prosperity, create better goods, and to hire people, create jobs, etc. Those institutions have changed and they have improved. It's the political institutions, it's the economic institutions, but we don't have to look 200 years. We can only look 20 years behind, because we can see that in Eastern and Central Europe we had the centrally planned economic disaster, which was, the totalitarian communist system totally broke apart. Hundreds and millions of people came out of it, and they started creating those freedoms again for people. So systems can definitely change, but we don't have to go to those revolutions. We can also look through the Western world in the past 20 years, because a number of countries, such as the Netherlands and Sweden and many other countries, have reformed substantially, so it has been possible. But of course, it's not easy, and there's resistance within the systems, but it is possible. I think, first of all, we can see that there have been universal paradigm shifts. You can take 1789 as an example, the French Revolution, which changed the view about what is a man, what is a person, what is his or her rights and fundamental freedoms. That changed the views in France and spreading throughout the world. 1989 also changed many ideas about this, because the only alternative to the free economy and the free society, that is centrally planned communism, completely collapsed. So now we can see that the former communist countries, such as Russia, is now one of the most capitalist. We can see that China still has communist rule to its name, but its economy is very much capitalist. So that is an idea which, went victorious out of 1989, which was indeed a paradigm shift. But one shall not underestimate that these ideas might come from one single place. 1789 came in France. 1989, might say that it came in Berlin when the wall came down, etc. So these things might happen locally, but they might have an international effect.